hailed as one of Activision's greatest franchises. But after only 6 years, the series has quietly vanished from the public along with most of its competition. Were these games just a fad that got too large for its own good, or was there something else at play? What happened to Skylanders? Well, the story starts a long time ago in 1989. Around this time, a company called Toys for Bob was established by Paul Reach and Fred Ford, a couple of young friends who had worked in the gaming industry for years prior. Their first title was 1990's Star Control, published by Accolade. Initially, it only released...
I really have to pee. I'll be like 10 seconds. I'm tripping. I'm tripping over stuff. No. I'm knocking things over. What'd I do? I done did it now. So many wires on the floor. Okay. We're good. Okay.
For the Amiga and MS-DOS, but was ported to the Sega Mega Drive and other systems a year later, ultimately turning out to be a success with 120,000 copies sold and the creation of
I love
sequel.
Skylanders, bro.
Star Control 2 expanded on the original and was a smash
I only
hit,
played Spyro's Adventure, but it was so,
and still appearing on
or was it Spyro's
list
Adventure?
of best games of all
I
time.
don't know, I think it might have been.
even
I played it with
today.
my brother.
But despite the success, Toys for Bob wasn't interested in
I don't
developing a
remember.
third
He
game.
played
And
Giants.
eventually
I never
released
played
the
Giants.
game as open source, so fans could port it to modern devices on their own accord. The studio made some other unique titles over the years, such as The Horde, Pandemonium, and The Unholy War. In short, Toys for Bob was quickly becoming a well-established game development studio, and things were going relatively well. But the team at Toys for Bob wanted more, and the lucrative business of licensed games started to catch their attention. They needed more than just another modest success to keep the studio afloat, so they struck a deal and got to work on Disney's 102 Dalmatians, Puppies to the Rescue. Following this, they worked on 2003's Disney Extreme Skate Adventure and 2005's Madagascar the Game. Their last two titles were developed in collaboration with Activision, so when the company courted Toys for Bob, they were interested. This led to Activision's buyout of Toys for Bob in 2005 for an undisclosed amount, allowing them to comfortably continue developing licensed titles. While we all know the unfortunate way that things go when a company gets acquired by Activision, this acquisition was actually a great learning opportunity for the studio, and it expanded their resources greatly. Their time developing licensed titles taught them how to design games for children, but only a few years after the acquisition, the licensed game craze had finally dried up. And suddenly, Toys for Bob needed something new to convince the higher-ups at Activision that this acquisition was worth it. A character designer at Toys for Bob, Yi-Wei Wong, made toys as a hobby, such as this hamster-powered walker. During a brainstorming session at Toys for Bob, someone pitched the idea of incorporating toy figures into a video game. Wong went to the laboratory to see what he could do, and he kept returning to concepts of monster-like characters, which the rest of the team adored.
My neighbor Brian was like, yo, where'd you get this knife? I'm like, Bespoke Postman.
I see you talking about Bespoke.
Now, he had to figure out the matter of how to interface these toys with a video game. And fortunately for the team, another employee, Robert Leyland, enjoyed tinkering with electronics. So while searching for ways to utilize Yi-Wei Wong's work, Leyland created what would later become the Power Portal with RFID technology.
Nah, bro, it was such a
The
cool
team
concept.
didn't know it yet, but they had just
bro, we had so
conceptualized their
many
smash
Skylanders.
hit. While all of this was going on, Activision underwent some major changes in 2008 as it and Vivendi
I really
merged
liked
into Activision Blizzard.
that one like
This led them
robot
to
dragon.
acquiring IPs like World of Warcraft, Crash Bandicoot, and Spyro. As a result, they let Toys for Bob pick a franchise that they wanted to work on for their next title. So, for 6 months, the studio shifted their focus away from this new toy project to a new Spyro game, attempting an edgier take on the franchise. But unfortunately, it wasn't working well, and the team felt it just wasn't Spyro. As they went back to the drawing board, Activision encouraged the studio to try something more unique and innovative. So, they revisited the idea of toys coming to life in a game and decided to incorporate Spyro into their original toy project as a way to pitch the idea to Activision. With that, Skylanders was greenlit and Activision was ready to turn this dream into a reality. Fortunately for Toys for Bob, Guitar Hero's success helped establish the supply lines needed to create the millions of toys necessary for something like Skylanders. The same Guitar Hero that I talked about in a previous video, which will be linked in the description. Anyways, things just aligned perfectly for this project to come to fruition. Around the same time as the Guitar Hero supply chains were allowing these toys to be produced at scale, the cost of RFID technology was drastically decreasing.
So cool.
Plus, Activision's connections enabled them to secure Hans Zimmer to write the main theme for the game, and Toy Story's writers, Alec Sokolow and Joel Cohen, to write the story. But even with all of these perfect circumstances, the project was incredibly ambitious, and corners would inevitably have to be cut to meet the deadlines. At least, that's what the team suspected. As we all know, large game publishers are notorious for cutting costs and forcing developers to do double the work
Oh my
with
God,
less
not that
money and
guy.
harder deadlines.
See how I hit
They
that rock
always
over
need
there?
more.
Takes
But
a lot
oddly
of
enough,
skill.
when the team at Toys for Bob presented the game
What was
to
his name? I
Activision,
forgot his
something
name.
completely unexpected happened. For perhaps the first time in corporate history, the CEO of Activision was the first person to insist that they
I
spend
remember
another
me
year
and
of
my brother
development
were
on the project.
dying.
Toys for Bob couldn't have gotten
Wait,
better
so
news. Not only did this decision result in cheaper products, but it allowed for additional functionalities to be added to the toys. Instead of just reading data, the Portal of Power could now write data, allowing the toys to carry information between devices. Now, your Skylanders would retain their upgrades at a friend's house, whereas before, your figures were functionally identical to a newly store-bought one. It personalized your toy collection in a way that no other game had ever done before. But how is the public going to respond to something so unique and different like Skylanders? I like it when things feel different in gaming, especially when a game goes above and beyond to release updates that truly stand out. I've been a longtime fan of Techland, the developers of Dying Light 2, and the sponsor of this video for years now, and their content updates are always impressive. In fact, Dying Light 2 is a really solid game overall, and it's currently on sale, so if it's a game that you've been thinking about for a while, now is the time to get it. They recently released a new in-game activity called Tower Raid, where you fight where the game was met with open arms and wallets. Skylanders was presented as an action RPG with platforming elements, with the gimmick being its large cast of playable characters. Each character could only be played if you owned the corresponding toy figure. When you wanted to play as them, you would take the figure and place it on the Portal of Power that comes with the game.
I remember.
This changes your character on
I
the
went
go
into
at any
like
time,
a
with each of them having unique skills and upgrades
like
to unlock.
what's it called?
The game featured a variety of
flea
puzzles,
market,
such as the tilt lock puzzles,
and
although
they
the
were
emphasis was
selling
generally placed on
was the
combat
main
and
antagonist
exploration.
Chaos
In all, the
for
first
like
game featured
80
32
bucks.
different Skylanders.
These
You started
these
with 3 when
old
buying the
nerds
game.
were trying to
At
sell
launch,
it for
each
80
figure
bucks.
could be bought for
It
$8
might have been worth
individually, or
that.
3 together for $20.
They were expensive.
So it took over $180 to buy all of the characters in addition to the $70 game, without even including extra add-ons or special editions of the figures. There was also one of 8 elements associated with each Skylander, with the mechanic functioning similar to Pokemon types. So, if you didn't have at least one Skylander of each element, certain sections of the game would be a bit more difficult, encouraging players to purchase more than just these starting Skylanders. Because of these factors, every entry of the franchise was met with a great deal of criticism, as it was essentially employing physical DLC that targeted children with pay-to-play elements, and a lot of it at that. You can see this at a glance by comparing the ratio of Skylanders' negative reviews on Metacritic with other franchises, as a third of the user reviews were negative. The quality and innovation didn't matter to many when the series was so aggressively monetized. But for Activision, Skylanders was a cash cow. In only a few months, over 30 million toys were sold, making it the #1 action figure line at the time.
There was nothing like that, bro. All the kids wanted the Skylanders.
So, of course, a year later, on October 17th, 2012,
everyone
came Skylanders
wanted
Giants.
Yep.
It was a sequel with a few new gimmicks, such as the new giant Skylanders with exclusive abilities, but overall, it was just more content to feed the demand and generate more revenue for Activision. The game added 16 completely new Skylanders, half of them being the new Giants. And despite the fact that older Skylanders #1, it was a sequel with a few new Skylanders.
This one. What's his name? Drobot? Yeah, bro, Drobot. This was my guy. Who else? What did my brother play as? I liked, was it Chop Chop? I don't know. I liked the one guy. Where is he? The Flame Slinger. I like that guy. He's pretty cool. Who else did I like? I don't remember. There's 2 different Drobots. I don't know who he played as. I remember we had a lot of them though. Jeez, man. Yeah, we had a butt ton of them. Yeah, but I played as Drobot mainly. And I think I might have played as the Flame Slinger dude, and I don't know if I played as Chop Chop a little bit. That was so fun.
Half of them being the new Giants.
I did play as Spyro a little bit.
Despite the fact that older Skylanders still worked with the sequel, the monetization became more aggressive when new versions of them were introduced in a Series 2 line, which were slightly stronger. A similar Light Glow line was also introduced.
Oh yeah, we had some of those.
Attack. In all, there were 24 of these special versions of existing Skylanders.
I don't know.
The game reviewed slightly better among both critics and fans with its various improvements to the gameplay.
I remember that.
Like the first game in the franchise, Giants proved to be another monstrous financial success, bringing in $195 million in a few months, with the franchise as a whole totaling to $500 million in sales in little over a year of existence. I can't downplay the scale of the Skylanders franchise. These numbers are mind-blowing. So of course, Activision wanted more. But before the next entry in the franchise could come out, a new Toys to Life game was gearing up for a release, hoping to capitalize on the success that Skylanders saw and overthrow Activision
never saw anything
spot.
like that again.
The numbers were just too big. So, on August 18th, 2013, Disney Infinity would hit the shelves.
Oh!
It had the massive advantage of...
Oh, man, I knew that. Don't even get me started. I completely forgot about Disney Infinity. Oh, dude. We played the butt ton. Bro, we played that a butt ton. We played that so much. Oh, that was so fun. Bro, I love that game. That game was so good.
Pre-existing Disney franchises to pull from.
Bro, I remember I would be like
IGN gave it an 8.7
I'd be flying around with Venom, like with the webs.
Playsets, the sandbox knows expansive possibilities, and how much content was available.
We had a couple
with only
people.
The starter pack. On the other hand, Games Radar gave it a
Mr.
2.5 out of 5, noting a plethora of bugs and glitches, and found that the playsets all suffered
It was really fun though. I do remember that.
Still, even the harshest critics agreed that the toys were of good quality, which is one of the most important aspects of a Toys to Life game.
Man, that game was so fun. No, I don't think there was.
Acquiring every collectible
I don't
would
remember any other
with
games like those.
Merchandise to come. The game itself managed to sell 294,000 copies in only 2 weeks. By the time the next Skylanders entry was released, Disney Infinity had sold over 1 million copies, not even counting toy sales. This was a relief to Disney, which spent $100 million making the game. Their gamble seemed to have paid off, and they believed it'd bring in over $1 billion before the next year's sequel released. But now, with 3 expensive Toy to Life games on the market and hundreds of potential toys available for purchase, how much longer could consumers keep up with such an expensive genre? On October 13th, 2013, Skylanders Swap Force released.
It was definitely a different
This marked
time.
the first title in the bunny-hopping development cycles, where
as
Toys for
worried
Bob
about
and
money
Vicarious
as they are
Visions would
now.
spend 2 years on each game, staggering the releases so that they still came out annually. Prior to Swap Force, Vicarious Visions had only been responsible for the ports of Skylanders games to other consoles, so this was the first time that they were in charge of directing the entire course of a title. And frankly, they hit it out of the park. The special mechanic of this entry revolved around Skylanders with interchangeable top and bottom halves, allowing players to create unique builds to play with. To many, this mechanic, in addition to strong level design, would make it the strongest entry of the series, with critics sharing the sentiment.
I think I
They also mixed
remember this
things
a
up with
little
the plot
bit.
by
I never
introducing a new
played
villain
any of the
instead
other
relying
ones.
solely
I
on
just
chaos
played the
from
original.
past entries. Of course,
And
this
my
entry
brother
was
played a
another
lot of
gargantuan financial
Giants,
success,
but
being the
I
sixth
never
most
played it.
profitable game in the winter of 2013,
I
with
didn't play
Giants
Swap
being the
Force.
fourth most profitable. At this point, the Skylanders franchise had generated over $2 billion in
Actually,
just
I
2
did play.
years,
No,
and it
I think I
didn't
played
seem
the
like it was
last
gonna
one they
decline
released.
anytime soon.
I did
As
play
great as
another
this all was,
Skylanders
however,
game.
a
I
small
do
crack in the
remember.
franchise
I don't
appeared
think
in
I played it
Swap
a
Force.
lot though.
The Skystones minigame that was present in Giants
I
was
did play
completely
another one. I
absent
do
in this
remember
game.
that.
While not a significant issue by any means, this marked the first time that
Sure, I'll
every
say
prior
something about it.
mechanic couldn't return
Then
in a
I'll remember
sequel,
the name.
and this would become increasingly common as new gimmicks were introduced with
It
each
was a
release.
Swap Force though.
It was only a matter of time before the old would be left behind in favor of the new in sequels, potentially alienating fans who spent hundreds of dollars on toys that only worked in the old games. This frustrated fans, but it didn't stop Activision from continuing this rapidly evolving cycle. It was time for yet another Skylanders game. However, before the next year's annual Skylanders title could release, Nintendo announced a new product that was in the works at E3 2014, Amiibo. This new Toys-to-Life title would coincide with the release of Super Smash Bros. 4, featuring some of the game's cast. And unlike other toy-to-life products, Nintendo generally provided small benefits in games so that players without the Amiibo toys wouldn't miss out on much. This also encouraged people to collect Amiibo for its own sake, instead of doing it solely for the digital content in the games. And this strategy proved to be highly successful. So much so that the product became infamous for its constant shortages, rampant scalping, and poor communication from Nintendo. It was unclear if Nintendo was deliberately understocking products, if certain Amiibo were limited runs,
I
or
heard
if
of
other factors
Amiibo,
were
but I
halting
didn't
production.
know
But that
that.
didn't change the fact that they were raking in a lot of cash, putting even more pressure on Skylanders. Could Activision maintain their grip on the industry? Well, on October 2nd,
Yeah, that seems
2014,
pretty-
Toys for Bob and Beanox released Skylanders Trap Team. This game was the
Trap
newest in the
Team.
series, and its new mechanic revolved around the Trapper Skylanders. They dealt extra
This-
damage against villains,
yeah,
and could
I
use
think
traps
this
to
is-
capture villains
this
to
is
play
the
as if
one-
the player had a trap
yeah.
a corresponding element. Basically,
this
it was
is
the
the
same
one I
concept of
played.
the other games,
played
with
this
another
one
new
too.
gimmick to get
Trap
people to
Team.
buy the new toys. This title did manage to bring back quite a few beloved
I remember
features
that.
from past entries, such
Maybe
as Sky
they would
Stones
like
and Token
talk,
Lock
like the
puzzles,
people would
and the
talk
Swap
in
Force
the
figures still
thing.
functioned the same, but it was obvious that
was
the
pretty
level of
cool.
innovation was decreasing with each and every release. Critics reviewed Skylanders Trap Team quite positively, with a general consensus that it was another height of the series, but the formula
It was
was
good.
really beginning to stagnate and in
But I
dire
didn't.
need of
I don't
innovation.
think I played through it
Regardless of
all.
any fatigue or the new competition
Like,
from
all the
Disney
way.
Infinity, Activision claimed that Trap Team was still the 5th best-selling title of 2014 and the
We played
best-selling
through all
kids
the
game of that
Spyro's
entire
Adventure,
year.
though.
The Skylanders franchise was still absolutely killing it for Activision.
So I was dating this guy, Chris, for years. I wanted to buy a house. Chris didn't.
September
Okay.
20th, 2015, Superchargers released, this time developed by
I didn't
Vicarious
hear about
Visions.
that.
And for the first time ever, the newest entry to the Skylanders series was met with relatively low reception. As the name implies, the gimmick for this entry was the introduction of vehicles, which once again were a new collectible item, and once again, yet another toy that players needed to purchase in order to use in the games.
Yeah,
This
I don't know
just
about
felt
that.
odd because vehicles led to racing sections being added into something that was predominantly a combat action oriented game. It seemed forced, and because of this, fans rated Superchargers lower than any other mainline title
Yeah,
to
that
date.
seems pretty dumb to
And
do.
to make matters worse, the annual releases finally caught up with the developers. Corners had to be cut somewhere, and this time they removed the playable villains that acted as the main selling point from the last title. So now, not only did you have to buy new vehicles for your Skylanders to use the new features, but you also could no longer use the traps that you went out of your way to buy to play the new feature added in the last game. Not to mention, other beloved features like the arena modes and Chaos Doom challenges also failed to return, alienating many fans even further. The series was clearly growing too quickly for its own good, and longtime fans of Skylanders were getting upset. And as for the sales figures, they had also finally begun to plummet. Activision didn't give exact numbers, but stated that Superchargers performed weaker than expected, citing greater competition in the Toys to Life genre. That competition was the newly released LEGO Dimensions, yet another Toys to Life game that left Superchargers and Disney Infinity 3.0 in the dust. Still, Dimensions failed to reach the same heights of the Skylanders' heyday. Was this a sign that the Toys to Life genre was finally drying up? That answer would come sooner rather than later, as on May 10, 2016, Disney announced that Avalanche Studios, the developer of Disney Infinity, would be shut down entirely and the entire franchise would be laid to rest. While it meant less competition for Skylanders and LEGO Dimensions, it didn't exactly bode well for them either. Then, on October 13, 2016, Skylanders Imaginators hit the shelves. This entry went back to Toys for Bob and revolved around the ability to create your own original Skylanders. And rather than creating figures to facilitate this, the parts could be earned in-game via randomized crates, with additional crates available for purchase. In other words, the game had loot boxes. IGN found the practice to be quite predatory, as it was possible to accidentally access the storefront when opening crates at the end of missions, pressuring kids to purchase more of them. This gear also didn't work on regular Skylanders, yet again limiting its usefulness and alienating players who spend hundreds of dollars on past toys. Overall, it felt like the pay-to-play elements were stronger than ever before, and the sales of the game were pitiful, only reaching 66,000 units in the first month.
They really got
this
desperate.
would be the first time in the series that Activision
Good
didn't
Lord,
mention
man,
a
what are these
Skylanders game in
ideas?
their winter quarterly
Who
report.
came up with this
And because
crap?
of this financial flop and the declining interest in the Skylanders series, Activision decided not to release a sequel the following year, and Vicarious Visions, the other half of the Skylanders team, was quietly reassigned to work on Destiny. It seemed eerily similar to Activision's handling of the Guitar Hero franchise. Deny that the series was cancelled and insist that it's just a hiatus, despite the writing on the wall. A Switch port of Imaginators released in March to coincide with the launch of the console, presumably to recoup losses and gauge series interest. But given that Activision's uneasy silence continued, it likely didn't succeed. When 2018's Winter Report rolled around, all mentions of Skylanders had been completely scrubbed, when in past years it was touted as one of their all-time greats. The message was clear. Activision was done with Skylanders. The final death blow of the Toys to Life genre came with the announcement of LEGO Dimensions canceling its Year 3 lineup on October 23, 2017. So at this point, Disney Infinity was cancelled, LEGO Dimensions was cancelled, and Skylanders faded into the background to never be mentioned again from Activision or anyone else involved. Skylanders suffered the same fate of many IPs under the hand of Activision, an oversaturated market. Each year introduced a new mainline title, spin-offs, and dozens of expensive figurines. The later games failed to shake things up, and towards the end, you couldn't even guarantee the figures would work in the next game.
Like, honestly, just
Factoring in the
expand
competition
upon the
from Disney
game.
Infinity,
Like,
Amiibo,
you know,
and LEGO Dimensions,
add a
at a
couple
time
features,
that the
make
franchise was
everything
already starting to stale
compatible with
fans,
other games,
it's easy to see how players
and,
couldn't keep
you know,
up.
progress the
It not only led to
storyline.
the collapse of
I mean,
Skylanders,
how
but
can
the
you ruin something
entire
like that?
Toys to Life genre. The studio behind Skylanders, Toys for Bob, has gone to work on the Spyro Reignited trilogy, Crash Bandicoot 4, and Crash Team Rumble. In 2021, the CEOs and founders of the company, Fred Ford and Paul Reach, decided to leave the studio to go form Pistol Shrimp and finally create a sequel to Star Control 2. It's called Freestars Children of Infinity due to Accolade owning the rights to the name Star Control, and the game is still in development. It had a Kickstarter on April 16, 2024, asking for $100,000 and received over $680,000. Meanwhile, after Microsoft's buyout of Activision in February of 2024, 86 employees from Toys for Bob were laid off and the office was shut down, and are still as understocked as ever. Skylanders games, what was your experience with them? Did you play the other titles like Disney Infinity or LEGO